Amina gange ndi tubona kiranda Amina mu company eya WIB Uganda Limited ndi member. Wemba member company eno weyeida twalinga tutuli bulungi ng'abakyala abe wakawaka. Ng'abakyala abe wakawaka tuwemera kubaami baife nga bonkana abajamu nandanga twidi nti abakyala tebakozesa ki nanda. UN Women weyeida yatuteekateeka yatwegesa okulunda engege ng'abakyala. Twatandika beno okudulunda n'okudirisa n'okola ki twafuna mu ng'abakyala ababujiri district. Abakyala ababujiri district sofa tuli abakyala 14 abakola project eno eya WIB. Abakyala 14 twayawula mu sectors. Mulimu abakyala ba production abaliisa, mwaba abakyala ba validation abongera engege omutindo bayongerako omutindo, twaba n'abakyala ba harvesting aba harvestinga, twaba n'abakyala abakola aba marketing. Sector donna diri trained era didi kyedikola ki kyedikola. Project eno tufunyemu ng'abakyala. Government yaife ne ya Uganda njebaza okujja kujanga batulingirira mu ng'abakyala abana Uganda. Eri kujanga eturobingira ebibiina bingi. We have UWEB, baleta parish development model. We have Myoga. Byonna biri kwida muki mu bakyala oba mu bantu abaki aba Uganda.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
This isn't just a girl. She is the future. This is a teacher, a doctor, a community leader, our future president. She is the hope of our community. And as a community leader, I will talk to others about how we must protect her against child marriage and teenage pregnancy because it affects us all. We each have a role to play in empowering our teenage girls to protect them from pregnancy. Because when we empower them, we empower our nation. Protect the girl, save the nation.
Take action. Report any case of defilement or child marriage to the police or call Sawuti 116. UBC, inspiring Uganda.
Good evening and welcome to Behind the Headlines. My name is Timothy Nyangweso. It's been 18 years of multi-party system in this country. 2000, it was rejected. 2005, we ushered it in. The biggest question is what benefits or shortfalls have been with the multi-party system. We look at waves that have been there, political plays, but also maneuvers that have been there. The rise of political parties and personalities, their alliances emerging, and different pressure groups being there. The latest being independence, but the biggest being the cooperation agreements and the roaming of political actors in different political groups, especially the opposition. Is this what we signed up for? What do we stand to benefit, and will it get us to the promised land? But the panel to put the litmus test to this multi-party system is with us this evening as we get them introduced now.
Guests on set: Professor Ndebesa Mambusia, lecturer at Makerere University, College of Humanities and Social Sciences. A journalist and now a politician, he takes the bull by its horn. He represents Kira municipality, Honorable Ibrahim Semujunganda. She's a social scientist, a researcher, academic administrator and associate professor and dean of the School of Gender and Women's Studies at Makerere University, Professor Sarah Sali. The man who took Gulu to greater strides during his time as the chairman LC5. He is a teacher, a journalist, and now represents the people of Laibi Barandege in Parliament, the Honorable Martin Ojara Mapenduzi. Behind the headlines on your national broadcaster.
So you have met the panel, and the synopsis for tonight is where we're coming from, the present, but most of all, what's the future of this multi-party system? You can be part of the show on UBC, but also go to our YouTube channel and drop your comments there. Our number here is 0709 60 92 25 there, and you'll be part of the conversation here. You can tweet or you can send us a text or WhatsApp. Lady and gentlemen, you're very welcome and good evening. I think it's in order for me to start with Honorable Semuju to be able to give us a synopsis of what our current state is with the multi-party system.
I don't know, you should have started with the Professor. But let me give a background. I was a journalist at Monitor. 2003, I got to Chankwanzi to cover the movement National Executive Committee sitting. That movement, National Executive Committee, of course, the movement claimed fraudulently that they were not a political party. That's when the committee of Chiyonga, Bidandisari, Kakoza Mutare reported they had been instructed by Mr. Mseven to carry out study and then advise the movement, let me call it the movement, on many issues, but mainly political parties. In his speech, which lasted 2 hours, Mr. Mseven said he wanted political parties. The Chiyonga Bidand Committee said parties should not return because they are very divisive. That was a committee that had been set up by Mr. Mseven to advise the movement. But in his speech, he said he now wanted parties to return, and because of 3 reasons. The first was that the multi-partists, as they used to call them, today you can call them opposition, were bad-mouthing Uganda, especially in international meetings, because of a ban on political activities. And then he said the donors are also harassing us. So, and then the third point, he said the younger people, he said they are suffering from MP of peace. That Uganda has been peaceful for a very long time. Now there's too much peace. They are agitating for parties to return. So those were the reasons being given by the head of state for parties to return. He did not say that parties are these institutions that will do the following. He said he now wants them to return because he's under pressure from donors, from the opposition, and from young people. And his campaign in 2005, during a referendum, was a campaign of to the Jeko, let them go. So those who want parties can go. For us, he said, we will start in the movement. In fact, if you remember the early days of forming the new NRM, they were toiling, are we going to be a political party? I said, no, we're not a political party. For us, we're organization. And that's how they started with the name NRMO, National Resistance Movement Organization. All this was deliberate, that parties will return in theory, but in practice, we will not allow them to operate as political parties. In Parliament, the women MPs, FDC and National Unity Platform organized the Women's Day celebrations in their constituencies. They were all beaten, from Nyakato of FDC in Hoima City to the woman MP for Mitiana, the woman MP for, I think the one of Buvuma was brutally beaten by police. They did not stop at beating the woman MP, they also beat her parents. And the crime they had committed was to gather people. Yet all NRM women MPs were organizing the same functions. Today you can't address a rally. The Article 269, Professor can speak about it, that was curtailing and limiting political parties' activities at the headquarters, was removed by a court. We went for a referendum for parties to return, but Article 269 almost is still in force. So there is very little that you can do as a political party. You can't organize a rally, you cannot go to recruit people. The other day, Dr. Wesige was going to attend a conference in a hotel on oil. And they said, no, you can't speak in a hotel where there are no people. Because in the past, we are being accused of disturbing people who are selling tomatoes in the market. But Dr. Wesige was going in a hotel to address a meeting on oil and said he will not go. So the status, nothing has changed. Where we were before political parties return is where we are still. You go for election, they are going to be cheated by NRM. The military and the police think they are also an organ of NRM. I was in Soroti, I didn't go to Bukedea. I was in Soroti. You are being beaten. I told the NRM chairman for Electoral Commission, who was moving with the military. At one polling station, they arrested the FDC agents, but the one they sent to arrest didn't even know who the FDC was. They also arrested the NRM, only to identify him at Soroti Central Police Station that this one you have brought is also ours. But they kept him until... So really, we are where we were before the referendum, before the amendment of 205 returned political parties in Uganda. There is very little that you can do. Freedom of association is in theory. If I called for a rally, I'll be beaten. The last time I called a rally in my constituency, you can imagine in my constituency where I'm an MP, I can't speak to people. Maybe prompt visits to a market and a mosque and a church and a funeral. That's why these days, funerals have become political rallies. All the statements used to hear at political rallies are now statements at funeral, because there is almost no room to do politics in Uganda, except if you are doing politics of Mr. Museveni. His son has been moving from one district to another, a serving military officer, addressing rallies and announcing, I am coming to contest 2026, unhindered. In Isebe, he was received by the division commander. He went to Mubende, he went to Ushenyi, he went to where? So I think politics now, either you must be NRM or you must be Museveni's family to do politics in Uganda. And that's why political parties, after Soroti, we even had a meeting and said, yeah, does it make sense for us to continue in this game? So if to join a political party and you want to be active, you prepare to be beaten, to be in prison, to be humiliated. That's the politics that we are used to do now.
Okay. Professor Ndebesa, let me come to you. As a dawn of history, help us do a comparison of the politics, the multi-party politics in the 60s and the multi-party politics now.
Oh, thank you. I think that multi-party politics in the true sense of the word has never been allowed opportunity to function in Uganda. Right away, I think from the 1960s, maybe for a short period of time, let's admit that by and large, the political dispensation of party competition is new in Africa. Uganda or any other African country are actually post-colonial states, and they are new, they are young. The political parties are also young, but unfortunately, I want to use the metaphor of a child. When a child is growing, he needs space to even make mistakes, stand up and fall down, and that's how to move. unfortunately, political parties have not been allowed to grow. They have been stunted. And this is very unfortunate. So you find a situation that Uganda, since especially the 1964, parties started crossing. DP, I think, crossed, and by 1965, I think Kabaka Yeka dissolved itself and wanted to disorganize UPC from within. Since 1967, there was a de facto one-party system. I normally say that Idi Amin did not pretend to be a Democrat. For him, he didn't pretend that he was a Democrat. So he banned all of them. And in 79, there was the umbrella where the political parties were not supposed also to operate independent. They were supposed to be in that umbrella. It did not work out. 1980, we pretended that we had also returned the multi-party system, but it was not allowed space. Political parties, by and large, the executive has not allowed them, and even NRM has not allowed them to grow. So a scenario where a child is not allowed to move around and fall if need be, and be picked up, that is actually where you find that even a child, a human child, if he or she doesn't have people to play with at home, they normally delay to walk. So that's what has happened in this political order now that we have had in Uganda in the last 18 years. As he has pointed out, political parties have been blocked from growing, and that's why they are stunted. If you can't hold the rally, let me bring even another angle which people have not been talking about. Take the case of Kampala. Political parties, or indeed society generally, need to interact. You need to meet. You need to get spaces, green squares for interaction. In Kampala, all green spaces have been blocked. Kororo is now a government official space. The Constitutional Square, there are always army vehicles parked there, police vehicles. Nashville Stadium is now what?
It's a mall.
It's a mall. This Gogoindoa Stadium, I only last heard that it is Kainerugaba who was allowed to host a political meeting there. Nambore, which is supposed to be a town hall meeting, I am told when you go, before it was closed for renovation, you would go there to ask for a space. They would tell you go to CPS.
No, the last time I went to Nambole for an FDC meeting, I even paid. They issued me with a receipt. On the day of the meeting, police blocked the roads going to Nambole.
So there are no physical spaces. Town hall meetings are also not allowed. So the whole issue of dissent or political organization is not there. So what we have now is a multi-party system on the surface legally, but underneath we don't have a multi-party system. And the parties are not allowed to grow. And it is unfortunate that we shall continue pretending like this. For me, I would be for either banning them and you have only one party like the Chinese way, or open for them. Because when you continue in this pretense of having on the surface parties, underneath there are no parties, then society will not grow. Politics will not grow. And we shall remain polarized. And that is unfortunate. Let's not use pretense as a tool of political governance. We either have parties or we don't have them. These members of political parties, you go to a radio station, you are in the middle of speaking and the RDC comes and he switches it off. That is very unfortunate. Now that polarizes the country along those lines of people feeling injustice. As he has pointed out, you go to elections and there is electoral injustice along those lines. So we either remove the parties again and go in something which in the past has not worked, or we allow them. You remember President Museveni in his victory speech after the elections, he pledged, in the victory speech, he pledged to eliminate political opposition parties in the next 5 years. That is that's his goal. That was his pledge. And so I would not be surprised that political parties are not allowed to function, because it is a pledge of the head of state in his victory speech. And victory speeches are very important because people make those pledges consciously, and people judge them according to their pledges. So the pledge was to do away with political parties, opposition political parties, by 2021. 2021.
Yeah.
Oh, he made it in 2016. So anyway, that is very unfortunate. I am not saying it is only this regime that has done it, but even I think the Obote 2 especially, Obote 1 and Obote 2, and it is continuing like this, and it is bastardizing, if I can use that word. This is bastardizing politics. We either go the Chinese way and know that we have one party, or we go to multi-party and see how to grow, because we are stunted in two ways. We are stunted at the level of multi-party, and we are stunted at the level even of a single party, which is very unfortunate. And that's why the outcome of that, the symptoms of that stunting, is you see now political parties divided. Not only opposition, because even NRM is also divided. We have got in the political parties, we have got, for example, Akenda UPC and Wariviri UPC, DP, we have got Mao is one faction and another one somewhere. FDC, you have got a faction in Najanankumbe, another one in Katonga. NRM, we have got Museveni NRM and Moho's NRM. So all political parties are now divided and the society is polarized, which is very unfortunate, because when you have a society as polarized as like that, and you don't aim at unifying society, then it is recipe for danger.
Okay. Let me bring in Honorable Jara. Honorable Jara, your new portfolio, the signing, we see you as an independent. Honorable Semuju, FDC there. What's the ideology behind independence? Because FDC, we understand where they are. NRM, we understand where they are. Where does independent fall, and how does it play within the multi-party system?
Well, first we need to recognize the fact that our constitution gives room for people who would want to run for an elective position, but not on a political party ticket. Yes, you can belong to a political party. It is provided for, but you can also choose to run as an independent without belonging to a particular political party. That is provided for. So if you want to understand why, of course I cannot speak on behalf of anybody can run as an independent, even including Honorable Semuju. He can decide to run as an independent. It is a decision you can make. And so it's by choice. It depends on probably how somebody thinks, or whatever situation somebody is confronted with. Our parliament today, the 11th parliament, has over 70 members of parliament who came on the independent ticket.
More than the opposition?
No, not more than the opposition, because if you bring...
Just the National Unity Platform?
Yes, if you... Okay, more than the main opposition political party in parliament, yes. Because the National Unity Platform has about 50+ members. And the FDC has, I think, close to 30? Yes, close to 30. And of course, we have the Democratic Party, we have the UPC, and then we have JEMA as one member, Honorable Asuman Basilira, and we have PPP also having one member, Honorable Santa Okot. So the political parties have their members. The NRM has, I think, close to 300 members. And the independent members of parliament, about 70 plus, should be around 72 or so. So these are, and when you look at the independent members of parliament, majority of them, I'm not sure if there is any who never belonged to a political party. Majority of the independent members of parliament are people who belong to a particular political party, and for one reason or the other took the decision to leave the party and contest on independent ticket. So we have those who were members of the NRM before they left. I was in FDC. I left FDC and ran as an independent. And there are many others, whether from DP, from UPC, and so on. So that's but at the end of the day, it's constitutional, and you have a choice, and it's not a crime to run as an independent. I think the law, the framers of the Constitution, so that you know, naturally, as human, there would be situations where somebody would be compelled or would not want to be a party to a particular political party. So it was good that that provision was made, and it's in many countries. But there are also some countries where they don't have independent members of parliament. I think the US did not have independent members of parliament, but now, even in Germany, but now they're beginning to have members who do not carry the flag of a particular political party. So it's something that is growing, and I think it's to me, as someone who came to Parliament on independent ticket, I took a very conscious decision when I...
Honorable, if I may ask, what is the ideology of independence? We know what FDC is. We also know that members that have lost in the primaries have become independent. We also know members that have left other parties have become independent. What's the ideology? What is your ideology?
You see, I can give you... allow me use a statement that would appear broad. You may call it ambiguous. It's about choosing to make a contribution, okay, to your country. But in choosing to make this contribution, you don't see an opportunity of belonging to a particular political party. But in your heart, you want to make a contribution. You want to play a role. In providing leadership, in you know, serving your country at that leadership position. And so what drives someone to run as independent is the desire to play a part in the development of the country through that leadership provision, but you choose to not attach yourself to a political party. So that is the driving force.
You see, we had a debate in Parliament when we are looking at electoral laws. Should someone who has participated in the party primary and lost be allowed to stand as independent? Because it's not an opportunity to serve the country. It's just an opportunity to be an MP and earn money.
Well, let me finish.
And majority.
Can I finish?
Just a second.
If you have been an FDC,
if
you have been an FDC in the morning, and you've lost the FDC primary, in the evening you cannot be independent. You're just a fortune hunter, just looking for an opportunity to enter.
Well, maybe I can say this. Okay. That's why I say it. I will not speak on behalf of people who are on independent ticket. There are many members of parliament. But just to respond to Honorable Semujo, like I stood as an independent. I never participated in the FDC primaries. I actually left FDC before they did their primaries. The last time...
Majority of the 70s participated in primaries of their parties.
Can you let me talk, please?
Yeah.
Don't
No, I'm just giving you information.
Yes.
Yeah.
You see, when I'm speaking, I speak for myself.
We're talking about independence.
No, you have a right to speak on behalf of the others. Let me speak for myself. I have been...
And I'm not speaking for you.
Correct.
Yeah.
Please,
I'm not saying I'm speaking
please
for
give
you.
that little respect and I finish. Yes. So like for my case, the last time I interacted with FDC, it was a few months, I think about 5 or 6 months to nomination period. And we had a meeting with the party president of FDC, the Honorable Engineer Patrick Amuriat. And I put my position very clear on the issues I believe were legitimate, and those are issues I had shared with, my leaders in the party. I even took the trouble several times going to the headquarters, raising those issues. And so I consciously took the decision to leave FDC, not just because I wanted to run for a position, but I had left FDC. Actually, the time A&T was being formed, that was the time I left FDC.
Okay.
Yes.
Let me bring in Professor Sarah. Professor, you have heard Honorable Semuju talking about the 3 ideas that the president put forth, but also the history given by Professor Ndebesa and Honorable Ojara there. Where is the public in this whole picture of multi-party system? And also, were their hearts won? Are their hearts lost? You as a social scientist, help us understand the public.
Thank you very much, Timothy. I'm listening to these great guys, and of course they're advancing very great things. And I was very intrigued with the last question you asked them. You said the independents don't have ideology.
I asked for the ideology.
But I was also wondering whether the other parties actually have an ideology.
Okay.
Because I don't think anyone has an ideology in this matter. We on the outside, when you listen, it seems to be an agenda for change. And why is the agenda for change being fronted? Because people think certain things have not been met. And why have those things not been met? And I think that's why we now need to bring in the whole issue of the context. Because in the past, it was very easy to know what ideologies people were standing on, whether they were Marxists, whether they were going to be capitalists, whether they were going to be Pan-Africanists, and all those things were there. But I think with the 90s and the change, things have changed both in the global and in the local space. So we should not talk about political party activities as if they are constant things there. And all matters being constant, political parties will behave like this. There's been a change in the context. That globally, first of all, ideology was pushed aside. It is really cutthroat competition and exploitation of poor countries. And then when you come locally, you find an extension of that. And so Africa, including Uganda, has been characterized by unfair international economic policies, ending things like maybe wars and all forms of instability. Today you hear there's terrorism, tomorrow we are dying of HIV, then the other thing. So all these things come and cloud the political space. Now, as they are clouding the political space, or as they're clouding the society, you end up having development hampered, because investments have to be made in certain areas to secure places. So then people then complain about lack of service delivery. On the social space, you also have a lot of population growth, okay? We are not what we were in 1996. We were not even what we were in the 70s, or at the time we got independence, like Professor Ndebesa has said. So where are we? Many of the people living today even think the story of 1986 is perfect. Many of the people living today and are actively participating in politics think for places like Idi Amin or Obote, those are all distant in the past. And we have not done enough to engage them. So at the end of the day, how do they decide politically? They decide politically according to their practical needs. It is a pragmatic decision they make. And if they are living today and they are seeing life is so hard for them to make ends meet, it's very easy for them to think things are being done like that because those they chose to represent them are not representing them enough. So that's why you find every 5 years there's constant change. There are those who have been lucky, like Honorable Semunju, who keep coming back. But many actually do not come back. And why? Because they are being told either the people who are there do not care about you, or the ones you voted for you forgot about you. So even when they are changing, but they're not even thinking about ideology. The public is largely thinking about the individual person. Is this one my person? So the person may come dressed as NRM, or the representative may come dressed as FDC, or as NUP. But largely they are looking for who is ours. Who can we relate with? Who can bring me closer to the table? And even when you look at them debating these things on the different, either WhatsApp groups we are in or the different conferences we attend and the rest, people vote so-and-so because they think so-and-so will either get me a job, because of the practical realities we are having. The job, the road, the hospital, the everything. So if you have voted in and you're unlucky not to bring these things, or the government doesn't bring these things in your time, then you are the problem. You either did not lobby enough, or you ignored me. The thing actually which has cost many politicians, or MPs, however good they are, as we said here before, is jobs. There's very high levels of unemployment. So then people begin, yeah, you see, I went to her, she never gave me a job. I went to him for my child's job and she ignored me, or the door was never opened, or the gate. So you have all these things. So when people are making these decisions and you talk to them as to why they are making these decisions, they're not in very high levels of ideology. You know, ideology is what would keep you committed to a party so that even if you lose the primaries, you don't change. Okay? That would be a party ideology. But we no longer have much about ideology. People are struggling with the mundane details of life, the practical realities of life. And because they need this, they then have to make political calculations. In whose vehicle will these things be delivered to me? So at the end of the day, then the party may not make much sense. What will make much sense to them is the individual they are voting in. Except if that party is very good and very sophisticated and if at information dissemination, to educate the people. If you have certain publics where people will actually sit and listen to the party and let us go beyond individuals because this is the framework under which we've lost, so we need to change that entire framework. But in many places that will not be the case. And you also know that because of places where there's a lot of poverty, people also get bottled. Okay, there are those practical things given. We all know when you go to Kampala, you'll forget us in your gated compounds. But what can you give me now? So you end up with the sugar, you end up with the salt, you end up with very many things. So basically what I'm saying, in short, is that the context has changed, both globally and politically. And we are constantly changing, and we are constantly having this negotiation and changing the culture. So things are always changing. In the past, you would have certain ideologies stick because certain global powers were so determined to have those ideologies hold. If a leader did not side with them, they toppled that leader. Today, they really don't care. Okay? As long as their interests are served, they really don't give a damn. So now we are all, and me, I don't think we've reached a very terrible point. What happens is, that is how society evolves. It will reach a point, it will sort itself. But now you cannot impose an order from above with the kind of demographic we have, with the kind of economics we have, and with the kind of politics we have. Thank you.
And let me come to you, Honorable. Professor, sticking with you, we are a very sentimental, gullible public. Especially, you have spoken of personalities there. How do we get back on track? Especially, this was a good idea. And do we understand the democracy and the multipartyism that is here?
You see, when you say getting back on track, you assume there's a particular standard against which you're measuring us. So which standard are you using? Because I know many of us elites want to read what's happening in the US, and therefore we want to measure Uganda according to that. Or what's happening in Europe, and you want to measure Uganda according to that. But supposing Africa is different. And you see, we want to either we are looking west or we are looking east. Okay? So we want either multi-party dispensation, which is very much a neoliberal outfit. This last push of multipartyism on the continent has been very much on the vehicle of neoliberalism. Vis-a-vis what he said before, the one-party state of China, which actually is one of the things which was driven by the communist bloc at that time. But so supposing none of those works for us, supposing we have to form our own way. We are, first of all, very different. We are very ethnically diverse. not like what you have the US or the Chinese kind of outfit, okay? We are very diverse, very different levels of economic development, very different ways in which we are being bashed by the global powers we want to emulate. So I don't want to think we are off track. I think these are the pangs of labor. I think we are going through Africa forming itself. I know in the past we were very much on a Pan-Africanist move, but we were so disrupted out of that, that actually we are going to take time to get back there. Although I've seen, when you go on many global conferences on the continent now, everyone's talking decolonization, everyone's talking about Pan-Africanism, people are trying to say, the general discourse now is we've been shortchanged by the West and the East. Can we find ourselves?
Our identity.
Can we determine our identity? What do we want as an African people? What works for us? If something in the West works, bring it. If something in the East works, bring it. But if we begin saying that we've gone off track, we've lost the way, we are assuming that there was a particular way we must go. We are assuming that there was a particular path we must follow. Therefore, we have fallen off. Supposing we have not fallen off and this is our path, how do we improve it? How do we straighten it?
And we'll get to that part of solutions and how we're
Well, I just wanted to, fortunately, Professor Sally just talked about a few of the things I wanted to say. You know, there is that temptation of, when we look at politics and issues of governance, there is that temptation of trying to think, keeping in our mind, you know, the Western concept of politics. And so when you even talk about ideologies and all that, people want to, you know, begin to look at how the Western world, you know, conceives that, and so we should think the same way. You know, when we talk about ideologies, we are looking at ideas, we are looking at ideals. We are looking at the things that drive us into issues of governance, into participating in you know, electoral politics and all that. So we need to begin to think like us, not thinking like them. And in this case, I am meaning the Western world. So if you want to understand what drives a political party, what drives individuals, then you need to look at what are the things that this country is, you know, is faced with. What are the things that the people of this country are faced with? What are the challenges? And what do we want to address? And so you should look at every political party starting from that angle. And then you will begin to understand what FDC stands for, what the NRM stands for, what NUP, and all these other political parties, including those who decide to run as you know, individuals, so not belonging to political parties. But there is something that I wanted to, and when Professor started, you know, when you look at this country, not just right from independence time, let me not talk about the 60 years or so that this country has been, you know, governing itself. Let's look at what is going on. Recently, I interacted with a friend whose son was running for an elective position in a school setting. And it was shocking because even in our schools now, children who are running for these positions, prefectorial positions, are beginning to copy the terrible things that this country is facing, where we have reached as a country. And so you begin to see how much things have gone wrong. Now in schools, children have to buy sweets to give to their colleagues to be voted. There are a lot of things that have gone wrong. So it begins to tell you the kind of society we have now. Things have gone terribly wrong, and people have gotten used to the situation. And if we are not careful, it will take us several decades for things to, and that also has a lot to do with the quality of people who get into leadership.
Okay.
It has a lot to do with the kind of people who get attracted, because the moment things go wrong, it attracts any kind of passion. And so it leads, we end up getting away from the real issues that we should be confronted with. And so it is true that a lot of things have gone wrong, and these are things that, and you know, Honorable Semuju talked about, you know, how the NRM wants to, you know, manage everything, and the opposition is being blocked from actively getting. These are things that are real, they are true. But you see, there is a problem in, just like Professor put it, a problem in every political party where we have these bad practices. Okay? I remember sometimes back when I was still in FDC, we had our delegates conference. Some of the things that happened were not good. And so where the country has reached.
What were those things that happened?
Well, can I finish? You like interrupting people.
No, you have said there are things. You're talking about FDC.
Well, I will talk.
You left, so
I will talk. If you want to hear, I will talk.
Please do so.
Hey, but you're not going to dictate how I should talk, so slow down.
No, the moment you speak about FDC, you are enlisting my response.
Well, you can respond, but if you want to hear.
I speak for the FDC.
Well, it's good to know you speak for. You can speak. I will also say what I know. So, so what I see where we have reached, even if another political party takes over, comes in now, if as a country we don't put the amount of energy required to correct things, irrespective of whatever political party you belong, even if FDC comes to power tomorrow, or nope, we are likely to have the same situation or even worse than what we have got. So there is a problem.
Who is going to put us on the right track, and how?
Well, you know, so Professor, solving a problem starts by acknowledging that indeed there is problem.
Honorable Jara, let me bring in Honorable Semuju. You have had some of the problems there, but let me ask, can political parties get past the personalities? And also, what's the ideology of FDC that Ugandans should really rally behind you?
Let me start with the last question. I have interacted with mainly the diplomats from the West. They're going to ask the same question in every meeting. The last time I went to meet political attaches at all these embassies, I used to meet at either Netherlands or at Belgium embassy. And they're saying, but your ideology is not different. I said, you see, you just want to sound knowledgeable. Does the ideology of NRM mean stealing? We need to deal with the basic things, even before you take us to the ideology. Because even if we are of the same ideology, there is nothing that will stop me from competing, even if all the parties in Uganda are of the same ideology. Many people assume that the competition must be competition of ideologies. Not necessarily. You can be of the same ideology, but also you compete for an opportunity to be the one to either lead the country or to serve the country. But that's a question I have faced it many times. And this is what I've told them. So assuming, because they usually ask ideology and a program. Are your programs different from Museveni? I say, no, even if they are not different, does the Museveni NRM program include corruption? Does it include brutalizing people? So I said, you see, Uganda needs to deal with the basic things even before you go to the ideologies. Even before I became a politician, and when I was in the media, you read all the manifestos of political parties and they are saying the same thing. All the manifestos, NRM, DP, FDC, if they say the same things, you mean they should not compete because the competition is not a competition of idea, it's a competition of implementing that very idea. If you read the NRM, they are against corruption in theory. But in reality, NRM now means corruption. If you are appointed to an office, you help yourself the way you like. And that's why you have had all these fellows going to steal Babat. Because they think the moment you get into a public office, it is a platform for you to pick as much as you can. So therefore, for me, I don't, and it's a debate I have avoided. I don't want to begin answering. My ideology of FDC is center-lefty, is right. I am different from NRM. No, that question I don't answer. In fact, for me, it is immaterial. I want to deal with the basic things in Uganda. The basic things is mismanaging the country. And I don't think many people want Museveni out of power, want him because he is of a bad ideology. Nothing. They want him out of power because of mismanaging the country, because of stealing of public resources by the NRM, which is now, by the way, the official ideology of NRM now, if you want me to, it's stealing public resources. If we are in the West, this government should have collapsed with Mabat long ago. So therefore, the issues to deal with for me at the moment are not issues of ideology, are issues of learning how to compete, how to hand over power. We was talking about German and US. Ghana, under Rawlings, did things that worse than what Mr. Museveni and his government have done. They used to load people in a helicopter if you compete against Rawlings and then throw you in the ocean. But they sat down as the country and said, you see, this is the cutoff. We need now to compete in a civilized way. And people think that transfer of power is a simple thing. I met a minister in Ghana who told me the day they lost the power, they didn't even know how to hand over power to a group that had emerged victorious. They had to hire experts, and that's how they came up with a law on transition, and then sat down. So for me, I want to deal with the basic things. When we have learned how to manage ourselves properly, don't shoot people on the streets during elections, don't beat the look at the last general election. I was in charge of the FDC nomination. My candidate was grabbed by police. We had gone for prayers at Najanankum. The presidential candidate was grabbed. He arrived at a nomination center without shoes. The Honorable Chagulanyi was beaten as we were leaving. They had to put him in a police van. In my own case, I was driven in a police van to go for nomination. They grabbed me near the division headquarters in Ichira. So these are the things for me I think we need to deal with. The competition at an ideological level, whether you are center-left, whether you are communist, those things, they sound alien to the ordinary person who thinks the country should be managed better. Because even if it is the same party, like you've seen in Tanzania, they have had one party for a very long time. Even if it is one party, even within the same party, there can be competition. The trouble we have is that we have military men who captured power. They continue staying in power because of militarism. In NRM, they don't compete. And they will make sure that there is no competition in other parties because that makes them look bad. They will want all the parties to behave the way they behave. So therefore, to answer your question, for me, even if all the parties in Uganda were of the same ideology, there will still be legitimate competition for power, because getting into power is an opportunity to serve better than people who are in power. So once we have fixed that, then we will go to the next stage. Okay, you are competing, because in Uganda today we are not competing, and actually we are competing on programs. I remember 1996, the three candidates, presidential candidates, all spoke about universal education. I think Chibirige Mayanja is the one who said he had wanted to educate everybody. Museveni said he wanted to educate 4 per family, someone. All the programs in Uganda are going to be the same, and they are all good programs. We have had programs here that are implemented by Rwanda better than us. So for me, we are at that stage. Where you want us to go, we can go later. Let's deal with the basic things. Competing in Uganda, I used to tell people, I watch European football. They will lose, they will hug and go home. In the village where I grew up, Like, I mean, like, it used to happen at Makerere. If you are playing in North Court and you score 3 goals, they are going to remove the goalpost and the match will end there. Where you grew up, this thing used to happen. You can't compete in football. If the referee says a penalty, immediately violence. So we need to teach ourselves, but also we need to be fair, especially those who are holding power. If you have an election, you are beating all your opponents. At one time, all of them have been in prison. Supporters of all your opponents are being threatened. They are all in prison. That competition is never a competition of ideology. It is a competition of something else. In fact, in Africa, I think it is a wastage of time to begin discussing ideology, sometimes even by the including programs themselves. That's why, as a journalist, I covered the rallies of nearly all presidential candidates. Even people turning up at a rally, few are going to listen to the programs as they are presented. They will just sloganeering because they know many of you are just lying. Even if you say you're this thing, you're not going to do them. So the opportunity that we have missed as a country, the group that President Museveni came with to power, majority of them are people who meant well for the country. If the things they said and set out to do, if we had done them, we would be very far. In Ghana today, I think they have changed power more than 5 times and the country has remained. People who have refused to change power, when it happens, it is a problem. See Sudan, see South Sudan, go to Libya, go to, and I saw the president still crying for Gaddafi, that these West people that we keep are choosing are the ones who caused the problems in Libya, where his friend had been in power 43 years. And Mr. Museveni still thinks that Gaddafi was the solution to Libya, just stealing resources and giving to his proxies wherever they existed. So the African problem today is not because political parties don't have ideologies, because if you gave me 5 minutes to go and look for you ideologies, I will Google and I will tell you that I am this, because they are already there. The trouble is that we've not learned the basic things to live together peacefully. We can't compete in football. We can't compete in politics. We are, I don't want to borrow Museveni's word of the pre-industrial societies. We need to deal with that. People need to be honest, those who are in power. If Ghana can sort out their politics, you lose an election and peacefully hand over and then wait for the next opportunity. Then we will begin competing with the programs. Otherwise, we need to do the basic things first. I have told many Europeans, the last time I met them at the Belgian embassy, they were asking me, your programs are the same as NRM. Where is the difference? I said, even if we have the same program, for me, if we have a budget of 52 trillion shilling, my pledge to the population is that I will not steal the money. So the difference between me and NRM is that they steal the money. For me, my pledge is that I will not steal it.
But how sure can they be? Because if we are saying that the issues are the same, okay, so, and it's just individuals. So
yeah.
yet for issues which are systemic.
Yes.
So that means, to your friends who are asking you, then it does not matter. We don't need to change, because if we are all the same,
no.
even when some are changed and you come in, you'll be the same.
The programs are the same.
Yes.
The reason you change is that if Semuju doesn't do it right,
yeah,
bring another person.
Okay.
At one stage, you'll have someone who will do it right. But if you stick with the same people, you will stick with the same problem. As simple as that. Give everybody an opportunity, then you will know that this one is better. Look at Tanzania. I visited Tanzania many times when Magufuli was there. There are many things I liked about him. But the lady is also changing many things, including competition. Opposition politicians who are in jail have returned. She has said now you can even go and have rallies. So really, every leader will seek to do better than the other. There are things that Idi Amin did that Museveni will not do. There are things that Museveni has done, including his own son. You've seen comments he has made that these things, they are not doing well. So it's human that you will aspire to do better than a person you are seeking to replace. What is lacking is the opportunity to do so. There are many people who mean well and will want to do well, but one man and his party are stuck there. They're saying, no, they are the only ones who can make things happen.
Okay. Professor, some of the things that Honorable Semuju has mentioned are the basics. What are these basics, first and foremost? And what has multi-party politics bred into this political area?
I want to be bracketed in other people's basics. Allow me space to also show what I think should be done and what has not been done. and why we are going to remain marching time in Africa. First of all, we have not built strong states. By strong states, I don't mean having the capacity to beat FDC or to beat NUP. I'm talking about capacity and legitimacy to deliver services, to deliver public goods, among them to keep the country together. So the challenge we have, somehow I don't know how we have framed the debate, but the multi-party system is already in our constitution. Unless we were debating amending the constitution, that's when we would bring in most of these ideas I'm hearing. We have a constitution, and we must have a constitutional order. But we can always change the constitutional order. But we have a constitutional order. So, if we have a constitutional order, let's try to make it work. And where it doesn't work, we amend. But when it is there, let it be there. Now, the problem of Africa and Uganda is having shadow. We are shadows. Others call our systems ghosts. And when we remain ghosts, I don't think we shall develop, both economically and politically. So, if the constitution is talking about multi-parties and parties, and that they should work like this, but you begin having shadow. I think even these independents are shadows. You begin having shadows, then you will not strengthen institutions, because you should aim at strengthening institutions. Those are the ones that will make us strong and work for the people and for development. So, this pretense that we have multi-party when there is no multi-party, that we have a government, you find you appointing a certain person in a certain responsibility, but him or her doesn't have powers. The powers are with somebody who is shadow. And you know shadows, you cannot hold shadows accountable. That's where we are going wrong in Africa and in Uganda. So if we have decided to have the multi-party system, it may not be working. It may not be clear about here. I had people also dismissing the issue of ideology. I don't know what they mean by ideology, by the way. We have to define this one also. And at times you hear somebody saying that such a group has no ideology. No. Even if it is a negative ideology, it is an ideology.
We asked what is the ideology.
And we don't have to run society on the basis of what we have called just ideology. Ideology is a generic term. Mm-hmm. It could mean values. Mm-hmm. It could refer to norms. Mm-hmm. It could refer to interests. So, do we have norms of building a viable state, or we have norms of eating the state? Most times in Africa, we have had norms of the political class of pretending they are working for the people when they are actually working for their stomachs. And we need to be organized in order to work for the society. Do political parties have challenges? Yes, they do. But they have also a role to play in organizing society, because they have to aggregate ideas. You cannot have 40 million ideas in Uganda to run a country. They have to be aggregated and sectionalized so that at least people can understand how these ideas might be. Yes, we don't have to say ideology is communism or socialism or capitalism or whatever the case may be. We could simply say we want social justice in this country, because without equality and social justice, we shall have wars. Whatever development programs we are thinking about, even if we effect them, we shall fight over them if we do not have social justice along gender lines, along class lines, along regional lines, along tribal lines, so that we see how to move ahead. But we cannot do that, I repeat. We shall not build a state, we shall not build institutions unless we stop pretense. And how do we stop it? I think society should come up and tell truth to power.
Okay.
When somebody, allow me some minute here. When somebody is pretending most people go around, you know, around. They don't tell somebody that you are pretending. You find somebody saying, don't be tribalistic. Even when he's saying that word, he's tribalistic, or she's tribalistic. He's saying that I'm not tribalistic when he's tribalistic, even when he's saying that one. Somebody is saying we work for the whole country when he's actually working for the section of population. Somebody is saying we have multi-party when you are not allowing a multi-party system to coexist. Somebody is saying we are democratic when actually it's not democratic. So can we learn how to tell truth to power, whether it is in political parties, because political parties also pretend to be democratic in themselves when they are not democratic. The state pretends, or government in power pretends to be democratic when it's not democratic. Can we stop the shadow state? Can we stop shadow parties? Can we stop shadow promises and promise people that look here, things are like this, they may not go like this? We have said that politics is a dirty game, and I think we are making it more and more dirty. But those who are competing for power, I think, have that norm of survival, individual survival, and yet we want to provide public goods and collective services.
Okay.
So the problem is now, in my opinion, is mostly with us, the citizens. We should not allow these politicians to pretend and continue giving us ghosts when we are here. We should tell them, and we should not appoint them, we should not elect them. Okay, we cannot stop the elections. But you find people clapping, walking along the road, praising them, you know, praising. Me, I cannot praise you when you are wrong, by the way. Why do we praise people when we know that they are supplying air in this country? Why do we accept people to practice injustice in society and we keep around? So, using economics terms, there is supply and demand. I think Professor, the problem of Africa is the demand. We citizens have not demanded that our leaders follow the codes of conduct that they have set themselves to do.
Okay. Let's take a quick break, and I'll come back and read some of this feedback here. But the synopsis has been done, the background and where we are. Now let's find solutions when we come back from this break.
You can imagine we have finished an hour.
Yes.
Yeah.
These days, our homes are no longer just the places we live. It's where we attend meetings, go to class, keep each other safe, and entertain ourselves. To do this smoothly, you need a reliable internet connection. Buy the MTN WakaNet router, which connects up to 32 devices and gets a free 40 GB data bundle at only 149,000 shillings. Or buy the MTN WakaNet MiFi at only 75,000 shillings and enjoy a free 15 GB bundle to stream, study, work, and play on the go. Visit any MTN service center to buy the MTN WakaNet router or MiFi and enjoy the internet that does amazing things.
This isn't just a girl. She is the future. This is a teacher, a doctor, a community leader, our future president.
She is our family's pride. And as her father, I will protect her from child marriage and talk to her about the dangers of teenage pregnancy. We each have a role to play in empowering our teenage girls to protect them from child marriage and pregnancy, because when we empower them, we empower our nation. Protect the girl, save the nation.
Take action. Report any case of defilement or child marriage to the police or call Sauti 116.
Are you tired of high fees and slow transfer time when sending money? Airtel Money is here to revolutionize the way you move your money. We have revised our rates back to ground. Sending money from Airtel to other networks in Uganda, East Africa, and to the rest of the world has never been more affordable. Dial *185# and start sending money. Switch to Airtel Money today and experience unbeatable rates and top-notch services for all your local and international money transfer needs. Airtel Money. Instant, secure, borderless.
In fulfillment of the constitutional obligation, which mandates the state to make reasonable provision for the welfare and maintenance of the aged, the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development is implementing the Social Assistance Programme for Empowerment, SAGE, designed to provide income security and reduce poverty among older persons. Over 300,000 older persons in 146 districts in Uganda have benefited from the grants. The income security has made life better for eligible older persons aged 80 years and above, registered with the National Identification Registration Authority, NIRA.
Kita rangi golo Frida dongo nen mama kaje golo mapumai aja kait sabu apese ngono apot ka ngara kisongo dumune togolo sabu ka ngara gine tonga dumune togo wa dumuno ngo ka ngada kino ka songa gwela mabati tikipia kino ni agweli tonga kidomolo beli tonga jam ichelwe ya sapana ngona mama bola ne ngara kitonga gwele inyamata tenge itone cho mamka mamonge pone akajuna bila ani ti acha babalong ke ngara kisong yala mongo noi ke ngara kino.
This is a message from Expanding Social Protection, ESP, implementing the program under the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. ESP, better life chances for all.
MTN Uganda ne Uganda waraji bakusako manrane chikona tena tekobo seko season yakuna savu July kuma mal papa's hall usasule kwa MTN mobile money usasule gumu chitundu MTN usasule nega komitano iga sistemu kagatano stamu enda munana hasha MTN ofune tiketi yokati wabula kumulyango usasule mitwale ebiri yepe mitwale 5 ate meza ya milioni 2 munana July kodi ni hotel mkono mwenda July Nikan Resort Elweza 15 July France Africa Jinja Abiri July Maria Flema Saka Abiri Mwenda July Afro Club Eka Sangati ate yoyo noku yingi na mutualo wafujini dwa musente Talent Africa Victoria University Suzu Property Consultants Pepsi Max Uganda Waraji Ne
MTN.
Welcome back from that quick commercial break here on UBC Behind the Headlines. Even the banter continues when we're off air there to be able to discuss some of the things. But let me get through the messages here, some of them, and then be able to get my panelists to discuss some of the things there. A long message coming in from Asimwe in Bara there saying, we're listening from Bara 100%. We also see that we shall now pray for God whenever we listen, such that NRM submissions will feel annoying. Okay? Someone continues to say, Julius again, Asimwe says, I really appreciate Honorable Semuju. He speaks truth to power, and may he live and his children and our children. Honorable Semuju, seems some people are very happy with what you're submitting. Long live Honorable Semuju, that's another message there. Topic today is interesting. I really do not think we have multi-party dispensation here. It's a window dressing of the Western funders who push it. Santos here, thank you very much. One more here, thank you for the program. Honorable Mapenduzi has said the same things are happening in school when the children are competing for positions at school. I know of someone who bought sweets for their child, okay? Joseph from Ginger, thank you very much. Ndaula says, Timothy, thank you very much. Uganda's politics is overshadowed by fighting one person. Lost the political ideas. The politics is a reality and is focusing on a kind of destiny rule or governance. And power, money, freedom have overtaken the political sphere. Development of the country is running in different directions, political lines there. And finally, Timothy, thank you for the show. Most political parties are subscribed political parties. They tend to vote for different people and not political parties there. Emmanuel, thank you very much there. A lot of messages, we'll be getting to those in a short while. Professor, where we are, we've seen our history. You've also spoken of the basics and spoken of the West. How do we move from here in this multi-party dispensation? Professor Ndebesa has also spoken about it is in our constitution. How do we move forward?
Yeah, thank you very much. Of recent, I've been listening to Issa Shivji, who talks about constitutionalism. He's a retired professor emeritus, University of Dar es Salaam. And one of the things they were debating is, do constitutions create revolution or revolutions create constitutions? So constitutions are normally made after people have gone through some political dynamics, whether liberation, whether guerrilla war, whether change in governments, or there are some debates, and then they think the constitution needs to change. But to think that because the constitution says so, therefore people are going to do that, is a little bit ambitious. Street communicates the ideals, and I know most of our constitution-making processes in Africa, you go benchmark a number of constitutions and you come and get the ideals. When you begin practicing, you suddenly realize this does not work for us, and then you have to change, and then you have to change. Now, that is not a problem, okay? For me, I see these as processes of nation building, processes of state building. For us to imagine that there's some, of course there are some values of human life. You don't want to go on killing each other. You have to promise to protect people and their property. There are some of those basics. But to think we are going to become like what is happening elsewhere, because in the US they are doing that, in maybe Ghana they're also doing that, in Tanzania they are doing that. By the way, they can be doing that. But you see, every society has its own internal contradictions. That brings on board the kind of political settlements that they have. That brings on board the kind of economics, the kind of cultural things they have. So it is true we borrow the best, okay? But beyond that, you also have to give room for what makes you distinct to come. Otherwise, you will lament your way to the grave, okay? But of course, we said we must have certain values, but what are those values? And who is going to determine those values? And who is going to teach those values, okay? You cannot impose values on people, but you can work with people and discuss those issues so that they can become consolidated in the values. And as we are here today to discuss political parties, there are some of the basic vehicles or mechanisms to communicate those values. Unfortunately, most of the time, you have, as we've had here, there's nothing distinctively different, and we don't want anything distinctively different about the parties. We can actually have the same. So that leaves the population even more confused. If FDC, NRM, NUP, and everybody are going to push for the same thing, except a little bit of change of actors somewhere at the top, then why should I be in this one and not in the other, okay? That's why actually people just end up voting individuals who they know, who they have connections to. But I think, as we say, ideology is not just ideas and ideals, and within that, of course, we can have norms and everything. We can proactively decide to cultivate them. And political parties are best suited, because they have the mandate of the people, and our representatives in parliament are best suited to do that, to begin cultivating what are the kind of norms and values. And you don't cultivate norms and values through sloganeering, like Honorable Semuju has said. You do this through ensuring that there are rewards for upholding those values, and there are sanctions for not upholding those values. If we're just going to sloganeer about those values and systems and whatever, and regardless of what happens, nothing changes, indeed nothing will change. And the public is watching. The younger people are watching. That's why now young people have this saying, because if they see you're saying one thing and acting one thing, and you're going to lie to them to say one thing, then they're not going to buy it, okay? So what are we saying? Members of parliament are elected by the people. They are paid by the state from taxpayers' money. They are best suited to cultivate these values, but for us to, we also need to hold them accountable. Unfortunately, the population is too poor to hold anyone accountable. The population is more at the masses of those they are supposed to be holding accountable, like MPs, than actually being that. And maybe also the other thing is MPs have also duped the people, made promises they cannot deliver, because that's also the only way they can get elected, by promising A, B, C, D, and because in a population of poor people, that's what people want. People, as they're saying, they don't want to hear about their ideology and the party slogan. They want, what are you going to do for us? So to go through as an MP, you promise that, hoping that when you reach there, you will influence it to come. So we need the members of parliament who have gone in to actually begin this journey of embarking on values. Political parties need to begin the journey of embarking on values, on ideals, on ideology, whatever it is, it has to be there. But if they are all going to look the same, except the color, then there's no reason why someone wouldn't be in this color in the morning and in the other color in the evening and in the other color tomorrow.
Professor, just a follow-up question, and something that Honorable Semuju said. Let's get back to the basics. And the other thing he also talked about, Professor Ndewesa, let's get to the values. What can be our converging point to get us to a focal point, just one line of us saying, because Honorable Semuju said it could be the same ideology in NRM, in FDC, the same programs as he meets the Europeans there, but what's our convergence as a country? What can that be?
Let me tell you one thing. In the last two general elections, one of the things I've done as a research project is to document the discourse of the people running for leadership, especially at presidential level. And they all say the same thing. It's about development. They're all promising development, okay? Within that, they may have some differences in how they're going to do that development, but they're all promising development, because that is one of our basic needs as a country. We are underdeveloped, okay? And as long as we remain that underdeveloped, we are going to experience a number of unfortunate things. So whoever has come in power has promised development. All the political parties that are campaigning, at least presidential candidates, because those are the people whose speeches I document and write about, they are all promising development, okay? And of course, we've sat here discussing budgets of what is shifting and what is improving, but because we also have a very big population, and so our needs are always increasing. So if you want one line that each one is talking about as a converging point, development. What remains as a debate is who should be in charge of delivering that development. Who is best suited to deliver that development, and that's what people vote about. That's what all of them sell themselves about. I can do it better than so and so. And the people who are watching say, okay, do we go with those who have been experienced at developing it, or those who have not been experienced at developing it, or do we get in a new broom that comes and do the development? So you want one line, the convergence point is development, socio-economic development.
And I like that. Honorable Mapenduzi, what could be, Prof says, that convergence should be development.
Not should be, it has been in all of the political speeches of the people running for presidency in the last two elections that I've documented. They all promise development.
How does this translate to the public, and how do you as our leaders ensure that you are accountable and get it to translate to the public?
You know, my brother, Timothy, the starting point should be first understanding how the political leaders and the political parties understand what democracy is. When you look at the NRM believes that they are the most democratic party. They practice democracy more internally. The FDC also believes that they do better. They're the most democratic. NUP believes, so every political party believes that they're actually very democratic. But that has a lot to do with what each player or each political party understands when it comes to democratic processes. And also it has a lot to do with how our society, how the country looks at democracy. So when you hear Professor talks about a lot of devices, a lot of the things that are not correct, that has been happening in this country, he looks at this from a different perspective. So it is important that every political party, every player needs to begin looking at democratic processes, democracy, and leadership from a different angle. So I say it, if we want to solve this problem, if we want to get a solution, we need to start by acknowledging. And that's rightly how Honorable Semuju said, giving the example of Ghana. A country realizing that things have gone terribly wrong and it's going to lead to disaster. And so getting back to the drawing board. So it's important that in this country, and you see it starts with a discussion. Somebody will say, somebody may ask and say, but who is going to do this? It is not about who, it has to start with a discussion. And this discussion will grow and different people will begin to. So it's about beginning to shape the way we think and the way we look at how the direction this country has to take. Now coming to the, and you see, we should also acknowledge that there are leaders in this country that have demonstrated something different that we can learn from. So every political party has to reflect and see whether their professor talked about building systems that function, institutions that work. It has to start from. If you want to see a political party that is going to do things differently, you don't have to wait until that political party is in power. Okay? So if you are seeing the mistakes NRM is making right now, these are probably mistakes that came from how they got in. So even the political parties that are preparing to take over tomorrow have to learn and know that you cannot just start to do things correctly when you're in power. You need to start now. I talked about...
But how can they do that when they are not allowed to organize?
I'm coming to that, Prof.
Okay.
Good. I talked about some leaders that have demonstrated something different. One of those leaders is the Honorable retired Major General Mugisha Muntu. I have seen the message. You see, what you preach should be what you practice. So they are not just only Major General Mugisha Muntu. There are quite a number of leaders who are consistent. When we have such people, they inspire many. So we need to make deliberate efforts and acknowledge that yes, we can surrender, let things go the way they are, but in future it's going to turn into something much more that we will regret. So we need to start the process now. And the process, Professor, starts with dialogue. Talking to one another. You say it, there are people who fear telling the truth. If the Honorable Semuju is one of those like the viewers put it, for his straight talking and all that, we need to speak, and so talking is important, and we don't need to tire. So these are things that we need to consider very strongly and try to build on. But the other thing which is equally key is the role of every citizen. You see, there are people who say, you know, members of parliament are not doing their things, are doing this, and it is also partly what the society has accepted life to be. The society has a big role to play in shaping because the leaders will get on track when the society is put clear what they demand. So the people need to also begin to wake up and know that, you know, if we allow the leaders to do things the way they would want, at the end of the day, the common man and woman suffers. But also, if the society accepts to continue the way it is right now, then we are not, because the leaders you see right now are products of the society we have got. So when you see somebody promising a bridge, even where there is no river, what kind of a society would produce such a liar? Okay, and again, it is important to recognize that not every leader in this country is a liar. I'm not sure the Honorable Semuju can stand in Chira municipality and begin to lie. It's also about your caliber. It's about your experience. It's about knowledge. It's about the quality you bring. So if our politics is beginning to attract people who have got no ideas, and then they will begin to say anything. So we need to begin to shape our politics in that direction. Yes, we are talking about development. But if you are talking about, let me give you this example. I was district chairman for 10 years. I had a councillor. After a meeting, this councillor would come to my office and said, you know, Mr. Chairman, what were we discussing? I did not understand, and these figures, and you know. So we need to know that leadership is much more than just having titles or positions. It's a lot more of responsibility. And the moment we begin to look at leadership as a responsibility, then we begin to shape our thinking. Then we begin to know it's not about pomp, it's not about power, it's not about masquerading with titles. So we need to begin shaping that way. Why many people are now attracted and running into politics is that we have allowed an environment to emerge where people live in extreme poverty. People are not employed. Even those in leadership are seen not to be caring. And so in Uganda, politics has become the most probably attractive, so everybody wants to run to that. And so we have a duty as leaders that to reverse this kind of environment, we need to do much more. So people can begin to have confidence, a lot more better things can begin to happen. The employment people cry about can begin to, so these are things, and reversing it takes time, but it is possible.
Honorable Semuju, she pointed out the focal point should be development, even as the promises have been made. But when you look at the trajectory of our multi-party politics, how do we bring it on course? How do we change the trajectory there?
Where we are now, and I remember when I had an opportunity for a debate with Mr. Museveni, I pleaded with him. Because almost in all the African setup, where there is stability and peaceful transfer of power, it has not happened just because of writing of a constitution or of a law to regulate political parties. It has happened because those who are in power and those they are competing with have sat down and committed themselves. You remember Sani Abacha in Nigeria, when the Almighty called him, the key actors sat down and agreed that from today onwards, this is how we want Nigeria to move. It started with the Abdallah, who said, okay, you will be president, but you will not contest the next election. Since then, they have changed the leaders. Obasanjo wanted the constitution to be amended such that he can go for a third term. His vice president, who was chairing the Senate, said, no, you will not change it. And since then, you have had leaders in Nigeria come and go. Now Buhari is gone. Senegal, recently you had riots because the president was also trying to change the constitution to run for a third term. When he saw the riots, he said, please, in the interest, in fact, I was reading his speech. He said, Senegal is bigger than me. I will let it go, I will let it go, so the country can be peaceful. The experience of Ghana, I've told you, they had to negotiate how to take Ghana forward. We were talking about ideologies earlier. Look at Kenya. People who are of the same thinking and of the same affiliation today, the following year will, it's not that the ideology has changed. They're just competing for the opportunities to lead. In Uganda, we had an opportunity and a lot of hope that President Museveni, first of all, with colleagues with whom they came from Luwero, they are graduates with master's degree, with experience, that they will not repeat the mistakes of Obote and Idi Amin. So where we are now, there are two options. The first option is for Mr. Museveni to look back and say, no, like the president of Senegal has done. I need to stop here and then allow the country to move. That is what will give this country peace. If he doesn't do so, we may slide into the situation of Sudan. It's not that Sudan wanted to go the direction they have taken. I was in Khartoum. And you see, the streets will lie to you. I was in Khartoum when the population was welcoming al-Bashir from South Africa the day they had wanted to arrest him because of the international warrant. And I said, this guy is very popular. 4 months later, the same people welcomed him. We are the ones chasing him like a thief. So let nobody be deceived, because after 40 years in power, what is it that you want to do? You even give testimony that at this age you are tired. The NRM people, and unfortunately, the majority now who are in NRM are fortune seekers. They are people who have joined because there is something to gain. I hope a few, and very few who remain, because I don't think there are many contemporaries who can sit with President Museveni to discuss the future. So that is the only opportunity that we have, for the president to look back. If he doesn't do so, it doesn't matter how strong you will be. It does not. We have experienced, you remember the November riots here. It took the killing of many people. So an opportunity exists, and the person who should make it happen is President Museveni. I have told you, I pleaded with him when we were on the radio station. And he was saying, no, NRM will decide, as if NRM exists. So that opportunity, if we miss it, we can pretend about it. We will slide to the same situation like others. Congo here, we profile Congo as one of the richest places in the world with minerals. Every day they are crossing into Uganda. The UN has failed. Now the African Standby Force is there. They are also failing. So an opportunity exists, unfortunately, because you see, if we had played by the rules that we set ourselves, we would be far. I was in Parliament when Mr. Museveni sent SFC to beat us. They drove me past your TV here, taking me to Nagarama, where we are detained. Mr. Museveni came to power when I was 12 years old and 4 months. Now you are saying I am a bad man. The one who has been in power for, it's now going to clock 4 decades. So that's, and I don't want to pretend about it. Either, I don't know who will speak to Mr. Museveni to say, please, enough is enough. If we fail, chances are high. And I have seen the other, I mean, when you saw his son now thinking like a Togo, that when my father stops, it is now my birthright to take over. So all the African countries that are stable now are countries that have negotiated their future, are countries that have agreed on how to move as a country. What Mr. Museveni does is to recruit and compromise people who should be advising him. This guy, we were with him, with us as opposition. I don't know what persuaded him now to go and join Museveni. Maybe you will be the one to speak to him to listen.
I have not joined, we are cooperating. If you want us to talk about the details of the cooperation, we can talk.
You are with us, so now you are cooperating.
But we are still here with you.
So really, we still have that opportunity. Those of you who can plead with him, please do so. An opportunity exists for this country to peacefully transit from the current administration to another. At worst, you do what Tanzania has been doing within the same party, changing leaders. That deflates some pressure. But it cannot be one person, one party, and even within the party, you can't compete with him. The other day, there is a lady from Luwero who attempted, and she's immediately appointed a presidential advisor and told, please, here, these things don't happen. So here we are in a very difficult situation. Either the population will do what populations in other jurisdictions have done, in Sudan, in Libya, in Egypt, and doesn't matter how strong you are, when that anger continues building, when there is no hope that these changes will come, eventually you may go into that. So even if you train political parties, even if political parties write their ideologies, even if, look at the election, I was reading the letter by the president, and now, was this letter written by a president of another country? The one of Bukede. It's as if it was written by a president of Tanzania or not the one of Uganda. Because we are in Soroti. When they are cheating elections, when the prime minister was distributing money in the broad daylight with the cameras filming her, and now you say, no, Bukede, we need an investigation. And I have read that the policemen have been arrested. What about those who shot people in Kampala in November? So it's a very worrying situation. There are people who think stability is the ability to bulldoze everybody and they keep quiet. Then that forced stability, people think falsely that it will prevail all the time. You can only have stability. I had a friend and I was telling him, no investor worth the name will go to invest his money whose proceeds you can begin picking after 20 years in a country that has not changed leadership. In fact, most of the investors that we have here are these risk takers who will even go to Somalia and invest there. People want to go to countries that have an order and you are sure, because you can't invest your money thinking that with a guarantee of only one person, and when things changes, you are in trouble. So even to attract investment, need to grow the country, the development you were speaking about. And that's why you need to go back and read the president's book, What is Africa's Problems? It will tell you he never spoke about roads, infrastructure, he never spoke about development. In his book, Mr. Museveni said Africa's problems are leaders who overstay in power. When you ask him today, he will tell you when they are not elected, which he did not put in the book at that time.
Just a follow-up question. What guarantees do we have when this change happens, that social transformation will happen to this country? And how does it happen? Are we ready as a country?
See, there are things that are natural that will eventually happen. I keep giving people an example, very micro one. J.C. Muyingo was a headmaster of St. Joseph Nagarama, now a Minister of State for Education. He came to Namugongo, Uganda Matters. The year he reported, Namugongo got 12 first grades. And there was celebration that they had got from 2, I think, to 12. Mm-hmm. Now they sit 400 and they are all in first grade. What did they do? They changed. They brought Muyingo from St. Joseph to Namugongo. You've seen what collapsed. Even presidents, the motivation, we are where we are now, I don't even think there's a motivation for the president. I keep telling my children, my aspiration living in Mackay in 1988 are different completely from theirs. I grew up in a village. I said if I get a house in Kampala and a car for me, I will be. Now they don't want a swimming pool, we want this. Our aspirations are different. Our targets are different. But also, if you're going to get presidents to have and leave, one day you'll get one who will grow the country. But the moment you stick to one, you will be, like Uganda, his problems are going to be your problems for life. But even the energy, even the motivation, for me, I think the solution will be to allow peaceful transfer of human resource. You have one today, you have another one, but they also be motivated. That's what Tanzanian former chief just said when he visited here. He said 2 terms of 5 years is a long period for a good president to deliver. But it is also a fairly short period for the country to tolerate a bad leader.
Thank you very much, Honorable Semunju. Coming to you, Professor Ndebesa, some of the things that are stifling the society, poverty, and now politics seems like it's job seeking, it's a job where someone is waiting for an opportunity, but also we look at how violence has become something else in the political arena. The maneuvering, the power plays, moving from one political party to another. What's the future of multi-party politics? And also, does multi-party politics guarantee democracy?
And development, if you want.
Yes.
Multi-party system or no-party system or one-party system does not guarantee development. Neither does it guarantee stability. Neither does it guarantee democracy. You can have the systems written down in constitutions and laws, but underneath, you don't practice them. You have multi-party system above, you have good laws above, but underneath you are doing something. So, societies can develop, if we can talk about even economic development, but I want to say that development should not only be economic, we also need institutional development, we also need a state development. And those can take place under multi-party system or not multi-party system. They can also take place under democracy, by the way, under authoritarian rule. But I can guarantee you one thing, they will not take place under deception and pretense. They will not. And Africa has pretended a lot. They pretend to be Democrats, they are not Democrats. They pretend to be serving the public good when they are serving the private good. They pretend to be not having conflict of interest, they are having conflict of interest. So, development will not take place under deception and pretense. We have to be clear about what political order we want, whether it is multi-party, whether it is one party, whether it is authoritarian or whatever, but we must be clear about the political order and then build institutions within that political order, because ultimately it is institutions that will function and will make people also behave. They will influence the behavior of the leadership. But if we cannot allow space for institutions to grow, because we have not allowed space for institutions to grow, I have earlier on talked about having norms, socializing society in certain upright norms for serving the public good, not the private good. But this one cannot take place, and somebody has also talked about dialogue. All those cannot take place unless they are given space to dialogue. Dialogue doesn't mean coming here only and talking virtually when even people are sleeping. You should also provide what I talked about earlier on, the physical green spaces for people to interact. You know, Ugandans don't interact, especially in cities, because all places have been built up. You have those people who are staying in slums, they don't meet those people who stay in gated communities. Those who are staying in gated communities, they think they are safe. They are not safe. They will shoot you on the way. They will find you even in that gated place. We need to have green spaces, public spaces, where the poor, the rich, the women, the men, this tribe and that tribe will interact publicly. Then to have dialogue, we also need to have collective dialogue. You can have people of one party and another party, you give them a free space, not coerced space, where they can have a dialogue. But the dialogue should also not be patronized. It should be free for people to exchange ideas. Some people had talked about having a national dialogue, so that, for example, we agree on basic norms to manage this society, and then whoever goes against those norms is brought to order, and we popularize those norms so that we see how to build a strong nation with capacity. But deception and pretense will seem to be building development. Some of this development actually is not real development. You know, I have sometimes used crude language in the newspapers even, and I called it cow dung development. You know, cow dung, when it is a midday and it is shining and the cow defecates, very soon you will see it dry, but you put there your foot, the foot will go down. So this development that is not based on sustainable institutions and sustainable policies is not development. So we need to change our minds. I hope Ugandans can listen. I hope the political class can listen, that we need to have in mind a way of building for, Makerere says building for the future. Building for the future, but on a firm foundation of building a society that is socially inclusive. Look at the debate the debates we're having in this country and the budgets we are having. There are certain areas that are extremely poor. Mapenduzi knows better. His region ranks among the last. But what budget have you passed in Parliament as affirmative action to address the enrollment in that area? Look at the education system in some areas in Uganda. They can't even get 10 people in first grade. Some districts don't even get one person. And nobody is bothered to discuss the question of inequality, the question of unequal development in Uganda, the question of exclusion are not discussed. These ones are hinging around what the people in the past used to call the national question. We need to build a nation state. We haven't had a nation state. We are still a geographic expression. And we cannot have a strong state whose roots are built in legitimacy in the hearts of the people. But then people talk about votes. Some people say, this party or this individual has won elections and they jubilate. They are jubilating sometimes over nothing. The people do not vote with their hearts. They vote with their stomachs because they have been promised some little material thing. When at heart, there are somewhere else. We need to have institutions that are trusted. Now, I have said this and I will say it again. Who trusts state institutions in Uganda? Who trusts that you go to the hospital and you'll get services? Who trusts that you'll go to the land commission registry and you'll get the correct title? Who trusts that you'll go to police and you'll get the services? Who trusts that the MPs will go and pass laws in favor of the general population? So when you have a state that is not in the hearts of the people, but is in their stomach, and you continue pretending that everything is good, then we shall have a shadow state with shadow individuals, with shadow institutions, and we shall remain dancing around. The Southeast Asian countries, the so-called tigers, developed behind some authoritarian rule and states, but they based their rule on meritocracy. They did not look at Mwanawani, whose son or daughter is, when they were recruiting people into the bureaucracy, into the civil service. That's why they built a civil service that could run the state. But our civil service is weak because you can get a pass degree, you get a pass degree and you get the job faster than the one who got a first class. Okay. Now, that is a disincentive to somebody who would want to study hard. You can go to an organization, by the way, in the public domain, in the public discourse and narrative, in Uganda today, if you go to a certain ministry or department or agency of government and you work very hard, you will not be promoted. Have you heard that? You will not be promoted because the other people above you, when they see you doing very well, being competent, they will think you are going to overtake them. And the system is such that it has no way of looking for people out and fish them and put them up. I had the Minister of Internal Affairs, I think it was even the Minister of Internal Affairs, General Tafire, saying that there are some policemen and women who have served 40 years without being promoted, and yet they were competently serving because they didn't have political connections. Mwana wani. Without changing from that attitude and that practice, and we continue pretending, continue under this deception that everything is okay, that we can promote society and individuals and develop when we don't have institutions, that they are individuals, whether they are cadres or they are not cadres, that they are individuals who will from nowhere develop this country without looking at merit. Southeast Asia developed because they considered merit in the bureaucracy especially more than anything else. The politicians can quarrel they can change from political party to political party without a reason because they have to survive. But we have to build state institutions, state capacity, the nation state, and then those other politicians can always fight each other. But we cannot do that, one, without stopping deception, two, without following the code of conduct. You saw how in UK, a minister was almost censored because she drove, a minister of internal affairs drove herself and exceeded the speed by only 4 kilometers per hour, and she was almost going. You can see how the prime minister went and things like that. So we have a code of conduct, we have institutions in mind, and we serve the public good, not the private good, and we shall have a nation state which will in turn allow development, whether we have parties or no parties or multi-party or single party. But finally, we must allow space for all of us to contribute. There is no monopoly of ideas in this country. Let nobody pretend that because you are in party Y or X or Z that you are a superhuman being. No, that can't happen. Okay. Actually, the super thing should be a party or a political organization that allows institutional growth so that institutions can now check on the behavior and direct the behaviors of the politicians. Okay. But to pretend otherwise and continue deception will leave us in this state until we reach a certain time when this country might disintegrate. Can I make one comparison and I stop? Mm-hmm. Me, I am looking at the issue of Ethiopia. I have been of late giving people that example. Ethiopia under Zenawi, the late Zenawi, and his party, TPDL or something like that. TPLF. By the time he died, had 100% of members of parliament. Completely. It had obliterated the opposition. And therefore they were celebrating. When he died and somebody else replaced him, the system of pretense now made it impossible for that person, Harimimano or somebody like that, to govern. He resigned. There is this new man who came in. And that party that had 900% support in parliament, as we talk, has disappeared completely. It's not there. And the cadres who were promoting that party are the one who went to Tigray, and now there is a war in Ethiopia. Okay. So that prototype should be looked at and should be another warning to us that let's not pretend that we have widespread support, strong support, when actually the support is at the level of eating, not in the hearts of the people. I thank you.
Okay. I'm going to give Honorable Semuju a minute, Honorable Mpenduzi, and finally Dr. Sarah on their closing.
You gave him 10 minutes to wind up.
I'll start with Honorable Semuju, then Honorable Mpenduzi, and lastly Professor Sarah.
As I said, just to repeat myself, either Mr. Museveni reconsiders his mind, or we wait the catastrophe that has happened in other countries. Because imagine the level of cheating election that now ballots can be pre-ticked, and by 10 voting has ended. That happened in 1996 when they voted for people in Rukunjiri. And the people that went to Luwero and those who worked in the areas of Mr. Museveni were people who really wanted to serve, and that's why they made a risk. But those who are joining today, majority, are just looking for opportunities. Okay. So a chance exists. I am not one of those who think that electoral reforms, legal reforms, administrative reforms, we just have to get the leaders to change their hearts. If that doesn't happen, we can all fold our hands, but the destination remains one: turmoil, violence, because inevitably human beings at one time will say enough is enough and this is the cut-off.
Okay. Honorable Mpenduzi.
Two things. First, I'll start from where Professor stopped. I have interacted with a few young people who come to me and they say they're jobless. When you ask whether they saw any opportunity of a job being available and whether they are able to apply, they tell you, I don't want to apply because I'm not sure I'll get it.
Or I have no connections.
Probably those jobs already belong to certain people. Such mentality, the moment we allow it to grow, it kills the society. So
Is it a mentality or a reality?
No, I'm coming to, let me finish. It's partly a reality, it's partly a mentality, because if you have never applied, but it is already in your head that you shouldn't apply because you'll never get it, then probably you are also part of the problem. So where I want to disagree with you, Professor, is that, yes, there is this vice of, if you do not know anybody, you are not going to get a job or promoted. But there are also Ugandans who have worked hard, who have grown in ranks in different sectors, and they have continued to serve diligently. They are there. So it is not that everywhere. There is also hope. There are also good people. Now, if we want to build a society, because this is our country, we can decide to be negative 100%. And it becomes a culture, it becomes part of us. And when you build a society that is completely negative, you kill the spirit of that society. So I don't think it would be, it is important to point out the things that are bad, and we shouldn't fear talking about it. But it is also important that we recognize where things are good, and that helps to encourage and build a much stronger confidence in the society. So I don't want to agree that in this country, you cannot be promoted if you do. There are many people who do exceptionally well, and they have grown, and that is important. Now, the other thing...
I don't want to disturb Mapendus, but you started speaking like NRM wants
no.
to speak.
you see, my brother, Honorable Semuju, is so stubborn.
No,
but
I'm not stubborn.
You see, Honorable Semuju, you have to speak the way you speak, and I also speak the way... Now, when I speak the way I speak, then you say I'm speaking like some other people. And I think that's not being fair. But I'll, of course, as an elder, I'll respect you. But the other thing I wanted to say is the NRM as a political party is not going to be in power forever. And that is what members of the NRM, those in power, need to know. All over the world, there is no political party that remains forever in power. So the question is, how would you expect another political party to treat you tomorrow if you don't build a foundation where everyone feels safe, everyone enjoys the environment? So the NRM has a duty to reflect, because some of these things that are being said are not out of the blue. If a party refuses to reflect on the things that are said to be bad internally, the future is definitely dark. So every political, that's why I say it, every political party, if we care about the future of this country, every political party should reflect and say, where have we been all these years? What have gone wrong? How do we build a better future? Because you see, there are parties that professors saying we need to build institutions, there are parties that do not believe in building institutions.
Honorable,
they say,
let's leave it there so that we can pick it up the next time.
Thank you.
Professor.
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I want to say society is not made up of individuals. It's made up of the relationships between those individuals. So while we are focusing at the top, there are a number of relationships that go on, and some actually engage in the vices, even at local level, worse vices than we are blaming the top for. Then I still want to stand by my point of national development, socio-economic development, not just because all of the parties campaigned around it, whether we're talking about securing your future, prosperity for all, building a new Uganda, transformation. Everybody was talking about transformation, socio-economic development. And why is this important? Whatever the political rhetoric, if the economics is not right, that's what has brought down governments. Whether you're hearing the Arab Spring and whatever, these are all economic inequalities. And when people feel they no longer have a stake in a thing, they will react like that. So even when we've castigated parties, participation, they provide avenues for participation. At least I was screaming in my party, whether we are one or two, and I feel we also had a role, okay? So it gives that temporary relief. And then one thing we need to guard against, dispossession. People feel so squeezed to the wall, so while there are those who are feeling unemployed or whatever, when people now also begin feeling that they are losing what belongs to them, such as land, that's one of the things which created a wave around Camp Central and Near East. So there's a lot of dispossession where people feel they are more privileged, whether they are political or not, and they are going into the spaces and dispossessing people of their land in the name of development, which is very unequal development. And if the politicians or the elected representatives don't speak about that, that's where the time bomb is going to come from. So basically, as all have heard, whether we're talking about unemployment, whether we're talking about opportunity, it boils down to let us expand the national cake. If we can expand the pie and ensure that the mechanism of accessing the pie is equal, then people will develop. Otherwise, even when we are blaming people for the voters for focusing on their stomach, but even the politicians are in it for survival. Maybe the topic should have been not political maneuvering, but political survival. The politicians are in it for survival. The electorate are therefore not wrong to ask for what basically belongs to them at that point in time. So let's focus on national development as all the party manifestos promised. And when we work together and focus on holding executive accountable, because they're the people who constitutionally are mandated to deliver services, then maybe we shall transcend to focus on bigger things and not the stomach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Sarah Sali, Honorable Mapenduzi. Thank you very much, Honorable Ibrahim Semujju, and Professor Ndebesa for the discussion. The clarity is the country needs an identity there, but also what is our political order even as we move forward. But from us to you here at UBC and Behind the Headlines, thank you very much for watching and have a good morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.